Getting your first proper job in a profession that you studied can be quite daunting. However, there are a number of things that you can do to put yourself in the very best position possible to gain employment once you finish studying at university. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you some steps that are well worth taking to assist you and increase your chances of gaining employment in the field of engineering as you approach the end of your studies, or potentially once you have actually finished your studies. For context, I have been working full-time as an engineer for a little over 5 years now, and it feels like yesterday that I finished my last exam. That time has passed so quickly. My background that I studied was mechanical engineering. However, I have only worked as a mechanical engineer in a limited capacity. For the past 5 years, I've predominantly been working as both a systems engineer as well as a safety engineer. As I was approaching the end of my degree, I remember just how proactive I was being to make sure that I had everything in place to increase my chances of gaining a job straight out of uni. And sure enough, I was able to land several jobs before I actually finished my studies, which was a great reflection of the hard work that I had put in, not only to studying and getting good grades, but also the ability to apply for jobs, prepare myself for those interviews, and make sure that I understood what I was kind of getting myself into before walking through that door, shaking hands and having a conversation. Throughout the application process, I applied to around about 20 to 30 companies. I was able to land between 8 and 10 interviews from memory, and I actually was offered 3 jobs out of that entire process leading up to the end of my degree. So how did I go about it in the lead up to accepting one of these offers? Let's go through the key steps one at a time, just to provide that insight to anyone who may be an aspiring engineer and looking for some guidance on how to tackle this problem. Let's start within the realm of an engineering student in their final year. For me personally, I started looking for relevant jobs in the field that I was studying and like-minded fields as well, pretty much from January to February, which was the start of the studying year of my final year of university. Keep in mind that there may be a few different paths you go down to gain employment. You might get hired as a graduate engineer, you might get lucky and skip the queue all the way straight to being hired as a junior engineer. You might also know someone in the industry who's able to get you a job somewhere, or you might get offered a job as part of a placement that you might have to do as part of your studies. Regardless of which scenario unfolds, you want to make sure that you understand what opportunities are available and out there, because you might miss an opportunity if you think that you've got a job from your uncle at his local engineering company. You really need to take this into consideration. There are so many opportunities to gain experience in industry, and it's very valuable having an understanding of what's available where you live. If you're willing to travel, look on the resources that are out there that are provided for this purpose to gain that insight. What this meant for me as I studied mechanical engineering was that I was looking for jobs that were being advertised for mechanical graduate engineers, as well as systems, safety, and project engineering as well, as they are all similar in nature. They're all related, and the type of work is very, very achievable to do with any type of engineering profession. So that's what I was basically looking for. And I used a subset of advertising websites to find some of these jobs. One in particular here in Australia that's very popular is known as Seek, and it's very widely used by many people to find jobs that fit their criteria. I literally typed in keywords and put the location that I wanted to work in, which gave me a list of results, and that was as handy as it needed to be for a bunch of the applications that I put in to try and get a job at one of those companies. I pretty much checked this once per week, and I made sure that once the semester started going, so a few weeks into my studies, I was applying for at least 1 job per week. Just as a fun fact, lots of big companies that have graduate programs will advertise roles well in advance of when they're actually intending to hire someone. This can be all the way up to 12 months in advance. I actually know a few people who applied very early in the year and were able to land grad roles which were almost 12 months later, because there's a lot of logistical processes that have to take place to bring someone on board that has never worked in industry before. So applying early is never going to be at your downfall per se, because a company may be willing to take you on, even if it's not specifically for a graduate program. If you show interest and they're interested in you based on the qualifications that you have, you may actually land a job at the end of your studies, like an agreement that when you finish studying, you'll come work here. It's something to definitely keep in mind. The key takeaway for this part of the video is that it's never too early to apply for jobs, and you should be proactive and be looking for types of jobs early on in your final year of study. The second thing I did was to make sure that I had a polished resume. And also I wrote a unique cover letter for all of the applications that I seriously wanted to have a chance at getting a job at. I've actually made a video talking more about how to write a resume as an engineer. I've linked the video down in the description below for your convenience if you are interested in learning more about how to go about doing that. I have used my resume for the past 5 years to gain employment at several companies, and I have had plenty of interviews in that time as well. It's something that I'm pretty happy with, and it's something that I have developed over time. So having that resource available, it's more power to you if you take the time to clean up your resume, make it neat and tidy, and understand why or what goes into it and why it's going into that resume in particular. Feel free to use that link down below. And now if you quickly could hit that like and subscribe button as well, that would also be really handy too. Resumes really are an important part of your application process. This is usually the barrier between you applying for a job and actually landing an interview. The person at the other end who's receiving that resume is going to look at it and go, what is this person's experience? Who are they as a person and what qualifications do they have? Doesn't match what's going into this job or what we're looking for to join our company. This is one of the biggest issues. I see a lot of young people who don't understand the importance of having a polished resume. They don't understand that it's something that really will be chucked out if it looks crap and your whole application goes to shit just like that. I need to put a little bit of emphasis on it. It's one that you definitely need to get right. The takeaway for this point is that I highly recommend you make your resume as schmick as possible. I love that word, schmick. Make sure it is of quality. Number 3 on my list is that eventually you will most likely land an interview. And if you do, it means you've done something right so far to get to this point. So now let's take it a step further, and it's going to be to dress the part and act the part as you approach those face-to-face interviews. Most of this will be self-explanatory, but I've found myself explaining it to a few people. So here we go. Groom yourself. Ladies, shave that beard. Get a haircut, make sure you have a shower, brush your teeth, wash your body, and when you get out, use aftershave and deodorant. You would be surprised how easy it is to make a bad first impression if you look messy. Attention will be paid to this. Wear clothing that suits the role that you're applying for. For my first interview, I wore a button-up shirt, chinos, belt, a watch. I made sure to wear dress shoes. I was polished. I looked clean and I looked presentable. If the job demanded it, if it was the type of job I was applying for that required a suit, I would have worn a suit. If I could have worn a polo because it would have been a little bit more casual and I had the understanding going into that interview, I would have dressed down a bit. I made sure to wear what was appropriate, and I actually saw someone in that interview waiting area, because there was a whole bunch of us going through, in a hoodie, and it freaked me out that this person couldn't figure out that the look itself, it's in a professional setting. There were people walking around in formal attire everywhere. This person was wearing a jumper. It freaked me out. Like, put it together. Don't wear those types of clothes to a job interview. Additionally to the clothes that you're wearing, make sure that they are presentable as well. Make sure your clothes are clean. Don't have stains on your shirt, and make sure you tuck your shirt in as well when you're sitting waiting in that room. This is where I take it a little bit further now. For all of the interviews I've ever had that have been face-to-face, I've noticed something in particular. The receptionist is always someone who seems to be paying a little bit more attention to you than you would normally see when you go into any building that has a receptionist. This is because most likely the person who's going to be conducting the interview has mentioned to the receptionist, pay attention, see what they're like when they're not under pressure, when they're not being watched or they don't think they're being watched. They absolutely are watching you. The second you walk through those doors, you are on the clock. Be polite, smile, and you should do that in general. It's just good manners, but make sure that you are being presentable and someone that others would want to be around, because it's going to increase your chances if the receptionist tells the person who's going to be interviewing you that, yeah, they seem pretty good. They tick all my boxes from what I could see. So hopefully they go well in the interview. In the actual interview, make sure again to be as polite as possible. And this will be the key piece of information that I highly recommend you take home from today's video. If you've made it this far into the video, here is the secret. When you are asked a question in an interview setting, make sure you give a clear and concise answer and you actually answer the question. I have sat in interview panels and I've heard horror stories as well from people who have been interviewed where they get asked a question and then they ramble for 20 minutes, not specifically answering the question that was originally asked. This is super problematic. This will kill an interview in a heartbeat because it will show the person who's interviewing you that you're unable to actually articulate your words to get to a solution or an end result that they want you to get to. The questions are usually guiding questions. They are things that are pretty easy to answer in nature. The interviewer is generally going to be looking and assessing how you answer them. They don't care about the answer as much. What's your weakness? Obviously, if you have no experience in engineering at all, your weakness is, I have no industrial experience. It's just a fact that freaks me out a lot that people don't understand how to answer questions. Make sure you get to the point. As an honorable mention, if you are working a casual job or part-time while you're studying, this is also going to be beneficial in an interview setting as well. Most likely you will have learned some transitionable skills, which will pass on into the actual role. And this means that the company is going to have to do less training because you will have at least the bare bones required to interact with people, work independently, work as part of teams, communicate effectively, be punctual, understand the importance of being at work on time, and just working towards the milestones that you might be working on a big project with a lot of people. I myself learned these skills whilst working at a local supermarket. I worked at a supermarket for 8 years before I started my engineering career. And it's something that, again, I will vouch, I had a lot of transitionable skills that made my life a hell of a lot easier during that first year working as a graduate engineer. This is where I kind of want to summarize today. Getting good grades at university is great. It's fantastic, but it is not everything. There is a lot more that goes into getting every step along the way right to land that interview and then to land the actual job where you get an offer and then get to jump for joy, because it's pretty exciting when you get a job. It's something that I remember I was on the phone, I had just accepted a job, and then the other job that I wanted called me and I was like, yep, I'll take this one. I'll call them back and tell them I'm not going to be doing that anymore. So it's just something to take into account. It's something that has benefited me greatly as I've continued doing this with all of the jobs I've applied for over the past number of years. And yeah, it's something I'll carry forward with me as well into the future. I don't understand why others don't do it as well. I know some that do. They have very high success in getting jobs and they've done quite well for themselves as well over the past 5 years too. Hopefully what I've talked about today has provided some insight and it's given you some clear direction of the things that you might need to brush up, polish, or it might just take a bit of weight off your shoulders if now you have a more clear-cut and concise path forward to gaining employment as an engineer. To anyone who's finishing up on their studies and watching this for some guidance, good luck to you, all the best, and I hope that what I've talked about today helps you get through that process a little bit. With that being said, I'm going to leave you there. I have nothing else to really talk about. If you did enjoy today's video, hit that like and subscribe button down below, and that is pretty much it. Have a good day, have a good week, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.